On the day of the wedding, I secretly boarded a plane to Chicago. Coincidentally, my wife didn't attend the ceremony either, but our reasons were completely different. I was desperate to escape, while she was off chasing her first love, just to spite me. "Mr. Miller," the official asked, "are you absolutely certain about participating in this overseas peacekeeping mission? Our records show you have a wife and child. Once confirmed, your departure will be classified, and you will have no further contact with any family." The pen in my hand paused for a moment before I smoothly signed my name. "I confirm." As for my family, I thought of something, and a cold smile touched my lips. "They'll be very supportive." Hearing this, the staffer nodded and handed me a plane ticket. It was blank except for a departure time and location. "Please be at the airport on time, and I wish you all the best." As I left the building, a heavy rain was still pouring down. I got into the car under my umbrella, but my clothes were still soaked. "This weather is just miserable for being out," the driver couldn't help but remark. I nodded in agreement, but as I stared into the downpour, my mind drifted back a few days. I remembered dragging my feverish body through a storm just like this one to bring Chloe her stomach medication. The rain that day had been even worse. I had carefully shielded the soup and medicine in my arms, keeping them perfectly dry. But when I arrived, I found myself surrounded by a crowd of people, all staring at me like I was some kind of spectacle. Someone grumbled that they'd lost the bet. They hadn't expected anyone to actually deliver something in under 20 minutes in that storm. They said they'd pay up. It was only then that I realized I was the subject of their bet. A wave of humiliation washed over me, as if I'd been slapped hard across the face. I looked to Chloe, hoping for an explanation, but she wouldn't even meet my eyes. Her gaze was fixed on the man sitting next to her, Alex. A man whose face I knew from Chloe's photo albums and her phone. Her childhood sweetheart, her first love. I never imagined I would meet Alex like this. He was sitting beside Chloe, who had another man's jacket draped over her shoulders. Meanwhile, I stood there, soaked to the bone, cold rain dripping from my hair like a pathetic stray. Alex, however, just smiled amicably and offered me a few tissues. "Is this your butler? Running out in a storm like this to bring you things? Chloe, you'd better remember to give him a raise when you get home." My mind went blank, but my body reacted before I could think. I slapped his hand away. The sharp sound echoed through the room, silencing the chatter. Powerful shove followed. Chloe pushed me to the floor. Already weak from the fever, my body gave way, and my head slammed hard against the edge of the glass coffee table. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital. My head was wrapped in thick gauze, and when I looked around, there was no one by my bedside. My wife, Chloe, wasn't there. My daughter, Haley, wasn't there either. I had a family, yet I lay there all alone in that hospital bed for what felt like an eternity. I checked my phone. Other than spam from my service provider, there wasn't a single message asking about me. A bitter sting filled my eyes. I fought through the throbbing pain in my head and called Haley. I had given up hope that Chloe would care. I just wanted to see my daughter, my own flesh and blood. The phone rang for a long time before someone picked up. I felt like I was grasping at a final lifeline, about to speak, when I heard Alex's smooth voice on the other end. "Sorry, Haley's busy shopping right now. She can't take your call." I froze. Then, a surge of rage hit me, and I yelled at him to put Haley on the phone. I didn't care if he and Chloe were getting back together, but he couldn't have my daughter. Alex just replied in a pitying tone, "Acting hysterical like this will only make Haley dislike you more. Here, why don't you listen for yourself?" The sound on the other end grew louder. He had put the phone on speaker. "Haley, come over here." "Thanks, Alex. You're the best. Alex, you're the nicest person in the whole world." "Really? Better than your dad." "My dad would never take me to an amusement park or buy me all these snacks. All he does is stay home and cook those soupy things and force Mom and me to drink them. They taste like garbage. They're disgusting." Haley's voice trailed off, and my heart felt hollow. Chloe and Haley's health was fragile. They needed careful looking after. And all my efforts, all my care, were seen as nothing more than a burden to them. Then, Alex's voice returned, dripping with pity. "I know this might sound cruel, but you're an able-bodied man who just stays home doing chores anyone could do. Guilt-tripping your wife and child with your service is pretty pathetic, don't you think?" I don't remember what else he said after that. I just remember feeling a profound cold spread through me, as if my blood was turning to ice, leaving me frozen and unable to move. When I came to again, a nurse told me I had passed out from the fever. She said it was a good thing I was already in the hospital, or the fever could have caused permanent damage. I just laughed. If I had been left brain damaged, Chloe and Haley probably would have been thrilled. I didn't try to contact anyone else. I just quietly complied with the treatment. The day I was discharged, I went straight to sign the papers to become a doctor with the overseas peacekeeping force. Since Chloe and Haley were convinced my devotion was just a self-serving way to guilt-trip them, then I would give them what they wanted, their freedom. I took a cab back to the house. Instead of heading to the kitchen to prepare their herbal broths like I always did, I went straight to the bedroom. After a moment of searching, I found the box where I kept my important documents. I opened it, and right on top, in the most prominent spot, was our bright red marriage certificate. I opened it and stared at the photo, my mind drifting. The photo on the certificate was a composite. At the time, Chloe was in a coma from a car accident, completely unresponsive. When I heard the devastating news, I immediately gave up a full scholarship to study abroad. I went to the Blackwood estate to become her private physician, managing every aspect of her care. I married Chloe in the second year of her coma. Other members of the Blackwood family were getting greedy, scheming to carve up her inheritance for themselves. To protect what was rightfully hers, I went and processed the marriage license myself. In those days, I spent my time giving her acupuncture and physical therapy, and fighting off her predatory relatives who were circling like vultures. For the next 3 years, for over 1,000 days and nights, I personally administered her massages and treatments. Even when her own family had lost all hope, I gritted my teeth and carried on. Just when I thought this would be my life forever, Chloe suddenly woke up. Once she was lucid, she accepted our marriage. She promised she would be a good wife. I didn't care that she didn't love me. Years ago, when I was being bullied in school, it was Chloe who stepped in and chased them off. A single sentence from her changed everything for me, saving my teenage years from being a total nightmare. From that day on, I quietly cherished her name in my heart. So even if our marriage lacked passionate romance and was built on quiet companionship, I was perfectly happy. I thought we would continue like that forever, that I would be by her side until the very end. But Alex's return shattered that equilibrium. It even drove the ever-proud Chloe to break her promise to me. Thinking of the thinly veiled contempt from Chloe and Haley, I gave a bitter smile and set the marriage certificate aside. I looked through the other documents. They were for the properties, jewels, and stocks that Chloe's father had gifted to me. I had set them all aside as a safety net for my daughter. My plan had always been to give everything to Haley when she came of age. But now that I had decided to leave, I didn't want these assets to be a lingering tie to the Blackwood family. I called Haley, intending to give them to her as a final gift. "Haley, can you come home for a bit? Dad has something very important to talk to you about." Haley's voice sounded distant. "Okay." The line went dead. I gathered the documents together. Just then, I heard the front door open. I walked out to see Chloe with Alex right behind her. He was holding Haley's hand, looking so comfortable it was as if he lived there and I was the guest. When Haley saw me, her eyes darted away and she quickly clung to Alex's leg. He patted her back soothingly. "Sorry," Alex said. Haley said she was scared, so she insisted I come back with her. "You don't mind, do you, Mr. Miller?" My eyes were fixed on Haley, but she wouldn't even glance in my direction. She acted as if she was terrified I might rush over and grab her. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that she was just a child. I didn't want our last conversation to leave a terrible impression on her. Forcing myself to remain calm, I said, "Haley, I need to speak with you alone for a minute." I didn't want Alex to have any chance of getting his hands on this money. In the future, Chloe and Alex might have their own children, and Haley's position in the family would become precarious. This was the last safety net I could provide for my daughter. At least she would never have to worry about money. It was the last thing I could do to honor our bond as father and daughter. But upon hearing my words, Haley reacted as if I'd said something horrifying. She shook her head frantically. "Mommy, Alex, I don't want to go. I want to stay with you. You promised you wouldn't let him take me away." Her reaction left me speechless. Watching my daughter cry so desperately, I clenched my fists. "Haley, what if I told you I have something very important to give you? Won't you even spend a few minutes with me?" Haley just kept crying. "I don't want anything from you. I just want to stay with my mom. Go away." In the time she'd spent with Alex, she got whatever she wanted. The latest video game consoles, the most expensive toys. She could go wherever she wanted, eat whatever she wanted, and no one was there nagging her. Haley was lost in this newfound happiness. She was young, but she knew that everything in the house really belonged to her mother. If she left with me, that lifestyle would be gone forever. She might have to live in a small, cramped apartment, go to a public school, and be looked down on by the same classmates who used to fawn over her. She couldn't even bear to imagine it. No matter what, she had to stay with the Blackwoods. My expression fell. After Chloe gave birth, I was afraid she'd be too tired, so I raised Haley myself. I never thought that after all these years, she wouldn't even be willing to listen to a single word I had to say. Chloe frowned. If you have something to say it to me. Leave the child out of it. Without waiting for my response, she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the bedroom. My mind was still on Haley, and I let her drag me into the room before I snapped back to reality and forcefully pulled my arm from her grasp. I had no idea how many times that hand had held Alex's. Touching it no longer sparked any feeling in me, other than disgust. Chloe was taken aback for a second. I had always been calm and reserved. In all our years of marriage, we had never fought like this. It was the first time I had ever recoiled from her touch. For some reason, a flicker of irritation crossed Chloe's face. Then her eyes landed on the box I had packed, and when she saw the marriage certificate on top, a look of understanding dawned. She probably thought that, because of recent events, I was trying a new tactic to get her attention. But that wouldn't work on her. After all, you only tolerate drama and mind games from someone you actually love, and she had never felt that way about me. To pull these kinds of pathetic stunts right before a divorce was just undignified. You saw how Haley reacted, she said. What's done is done. Let's just handle this with some dignity. Don't drag it out and cast a shadow over her childhood. I know I've wronged you in this, so I'll do my best to compensate you in the settlement. If you have any other demands. Before Chloe could finish, I grabbed a glass of water from the table and threw it in her face. Chloe stared at me in shock, her eyes turning red. In her entire life, no one had ever treated her that way. Chloe gritted her teeth, her patience wearing thin. Ethan, acting so unreasonable right now is only going to make me. I cut her off by smashing the glass on the floor. Shards flew everywhere. I stared at her coldly, feeling nothing but an immense sense of exhaustion with her. She was the one who betrayed our marriage, the one who broke her promise. And now she was the one standing there, acting high and mighty, making demands of me. What right did she have? Chloe fought to control her anger. Do you think that just because you took care of me for a few years, I owe you my gratitude for the rest of my life? That I have to worship you? Looking back, all you did was the job of a nurse or a butler. I wasted 5 whole years on you, letting you enjoy the prestige of the Blackwood family. I've more than repaid you. Don't push me. I had to laugh. The prestige of the Blackwood family. She thought I was some freeloader living in luxury, completely unaware of the immense effort it took to nurse her severely injured body back to health. I suddenly found myself wondering if her so-called love with Alex would be enough to ease her pain when all her old health problems flared up again. I bent down, picked up the box from the floor, and turned to leave without a single backward glance. Chloe watched me go, stunned. She must have expected me to break down, to scream at her for throwing away all my years of devotion. She never expected me to walk away so cleanly. For some reason, Chloe felt a surge of irritation. She contacted the Blackwood family's legal team and instructed them to draw up divorce papers. According to the agreement, I wouldn't receive a single cent of our shared assets. She wanted to see how tough I'd be when I was left with nothing. I carried my few belongings back to a small apartment I had purchased years ago. It was nothing compared to the Blackwood mansion, but I had bought it with my own savings. It was mine. I had just set my things down when the lawyer called. He laid out all of Chloe's terms. When I heard that I was to be left penniless and that Haley would be absolved of any future obligation to support me, I let out a cynical laugh. 9 years of marriage in exchange for being cut off without a cent and severing my parental rights. I have no problem with that, I said, but in return, Chloe gets none of my assets, and I will provide her with no assistance of any kind. Is that clear? The lawyer was taken aback and relayed my terms to Chloe. She almost laughed in derision. What assets could he possibly have? He thinks far too highly of himself. Chloe agreed on the spot. Once I had her confirmation, I didn't hesitate. I told him I'd be there to sign the papers tomorrow. The whole process was surprisingly smooth. Even the lawyer seemed shocked. He must have expected a long, drawn-out fight over such a harsh settlement. But there was none of that. The lawyer glanced over at Chloe. Even though I was being so compliant, she didn't look particularly happy about it. After settling the divorce details, I went out and bought several foreign language books. I needed to brush up on the languages I'd let slide to prepare for my time overseas. That evening, as I walked home from the library, the sky above me exploded with brilliant fireworks. A swarm of drones formed a matrix in the sky, shifting patterns until they formed a portrait of Alex and Chloe, framed by a giant heart. People on the street stopped, looking up in awe, taking pictures and videos. A display like that, fireworks and drones, must have cost what an ordinary person makes in a lifetime. It was an extravagant display of romance. I tilted my head back, watching the dazzling display, and suddenly remembered something Chloe had once told me. She said she was too busy to remember meaningful dates, so I shouldn't expect any surprises from her. She never once remembered my birthday. Usually, I just get a perfunctory happy birthday text, sent only after her assistant had reminded her, and even that had made me happy. But now I understood. It wasn't that she couldn't remember. It was that she couldn't be bothered to put in any effort for me. I watched in silence as the fireworks faded from the sky, just as the intense, burning passion I once had for Chloe had finally burned itself out. I quietly wiped my face and walked away. After the fireworks, Alex proposed to Chloe. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, her mind, for some reason, flashed to the ring I used to wear. It had been a free promotional item she got while buying other jewelry. She had tossed it to me casually, but I had treasured it, never once taking it off. Chloe snapped back to the present, but the initial thrill was gone. Alex didn't notice. He was too busy basking in his own happiness and soaking up the crowd's congratulations. Chloe, however, felt restless. She sat by a window and had several drinks. By the time the engagement party ended, she was already tipsy. Alex helped her into the car and got her settled at home. Just as he was about to leave, he heard Chloe murmur, "Ethan, my head hurts. Where's the hangover soup?" Alex froze as if he'd been struck by lightning, his expression turning sour. He wanted to snap at her but forced himself to hold it in. His family had lost their fortune. He was no longer the golden boy everyone adored. Chloe was his best and only option. He had to keep her happy if he wanted to secure his future. With that thought, Alex headed for the kitchen. It was just a hangover remedy. If a loser like Ethan could make it, so could he. He followed a recipe he found online, and after tasting it and deciding it was decent enough, he gently woke Chloe. "Chloe, drink a little of this before you go to sleep. You'll have a headache tomorrow if you don't." Chloe opened her eyes and saw Alex looking after her. For a second, it felt strange, unfamiliar. Then she remembered that she had accepted his proposal earlier that day. 9 years was a long time. Even if she hadn't invested much emotion into our marriage, she had still grown accustomed to my presence. Alex scooped up a spoonful and brought it to her lips. She took a sip, and her brow furrowed. The taste was all wrong. It wasn't how she liked it at all. But considering he had made it for her, she didn't say anything. She forced down a few more mouthfuls before lying down to sleep. The next morning, Chloe woke with a splitting hangover. She rubbed her throbbing temples, and her first instinct was to call for me to come massage her head, but she stopped herself. Her expression was sheepish. They had already filed for divorce. Once the papers were signed today, they would be nothing more than strangers. Alex, lying beside her, saw the look on her face and slowly tightened his fists. He thought getting rid of me was the final victory, but he had underestimated the power of habit. He worried that, in time, Chloe and Haley might start to miss the life they had with me. As arranged, I drove to the Blackwood estate to sign the divorce papers with Chloe. When I arrived, her lawyer was already there. He went over the terms with me one last time. Without any hesitation, I signed my name on the final page. Just as I finished, Chloe walked in. She saw me signing, my hand moving smoothly without the slightest pause. For some reason, the sight irritated Chloe. She walked over, her face a cold mask. Just as she was about to sign, she paused. "Once I sign this, there's no going back. Are you sure you have nothing else to say?" Perhaps she was thinking of everything I had done for her over the years. She decided that if I apologized for my outburst yesterday, she might consider being more generous in the settlement. Alex, standing nearby, felt his stomach clench. He had been worried I would back out, but now it was Chloe who was hesitating. Alex lowered his gaze. He had to eliminate any potential complications. When no one was looking, he slipped out of the room. I didn't want to exchange another word with her. After everything that was said yesterday, her feigned concern was insulting. "Please just sign it. I'm in a hurry." Chloe was left speechless. She had never seen this sharp-tongued side of me before. But then she remembered I was leaving with nothing. A man with no career and no college degree. My bravado wouldn't last long. She decided not to press the issue. After the papers were signed, I went back to my old room to gather the last of my things and then left for good. As I got into my car, I caught a glimpse of Alex in the rearview mirror. He was watching me from a distance, a smug, victorious smile on his face that filled me with disgust. I slammed my foot on the accelerator and sped away from the place that held so many of my memories. I was driving, trying to figure out my next move, when suddenly I heard the shrill wail of a police siren. I frowned, realizing the siren was right behind me. I slowed down to let them pass, but instead, the cruiser swerved in front of me, forcing me to a halt. Though completely bewildered, I complied. I opened my door to ask what was wrong, but before I could speak, I was roughly slammed against the side of my car. My face hit the cold metal with a thud, the impact stinging. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. I had cut my lip. I struggled, but I was no match for the trained officer holding me down. An officer forced my trunk open, and his face lit up with relief. "We found the kid," he yelled, grabbing his radio to report in. Then he carefully lifted Haley, who was unconscious, out of the trunk. The moment I saw her, my mind went into a tailspin. I couldn't process what was happening. How did Haley get in my trunk? What was going on? My car was blocking traffic, and a crowd started to gather. When they saw the officer pull an unconscious child from my trunk, their faces twisted with hostility. He looked so normal. How could he do something like that? He must be a kidnapper. That poor kid. He probably abducted her. People like that deserve to be locked up forever. The crowd was in an uproar, shouting and jeering. As the police led me away, someone in the mob managed to land a sharp kick to my side. I winced in pain but said nothing. My eyes darted to Haley, who was still unconscious. Even though she had broken my heart, she was still my daughter. Right then, all I cared about was whether she was okay. But the officers gave me no chance to get near her. They cuffed me, put me in the back of a separate cruiser, and took me in for questioning. I was taken to the station and left alone in a dark interrogation room. My mind was a mess. I was terrified for Haley's safety, and I had no idea what was going to happen. While I was lost in my chaotic thoughts, the door creaked open. An officer led me out. I expected to be interrogated, but instead, I was brought face to face with Chloe, her expression completely blank. I didn't care about anything else. "Haley," I asked frantically, "where is she? Is she awake? Is she okay?" Chloe shot me a cold glare. "Ethan, I never knew you were such a good actor. You're the one who drugged Haley with sleeping pills and stuffed her in the trunk to abduct her. And now you're standing here pretending to be concerned." My eyes widened. I heard her words, but my brain couldn't make sense of them. It was completely absurd. "What are you talking about? Stop playing innocent. If you didn't drug her and take her, then who did? Ethan, if you wanted something, you could have just asked. To stoop to kidnapping your own child to get what you want. You're disgusting." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "That's impossible. Let me talk to Haley." "I don't believe she would say that." Chloe stood up, looking down on me with contempt. "You really won't give up, will you? Fine. I'll let you hear it for yourself." She dialed the hospital. The moment the call connected, Haley's hysterical sobs filled the room. "He tried to take me away. I don't want to go with him. I'm scared." Her gut-wrenching cries struck me like a bolt of lightning. I forced myself to stay calm. "Haley, it's Dad. I would never do anything to hurt you. Please just calm down and try to remember what really happened. Tell them the truth. You're not my dad. I don't have a dad like you. I don't want to go with you. Go away." Haley continued to sob, her words dripping with fear and hatred for me. Even though she never named her kidnapper, it didn't matter. Everyone in the room was now looking at me with undisguised hostility. A chill ran through me, Haley's cries echoing in my ears. Could she really hate me, her own father, so much that she wouldn't even speak a single word of truth to defend me? The contempt in their eyes felt like a physical blow. I realized then that in Haley's mind, I was no longer her father. I was an embarrassment, a burden. My body began to shake uncontrollably. And then I remembered it, Alex's meaningful smile as I was leaving the estate. At the time, I thought it was just the smirk of a man who thought he'd won, but now it seemed sinister. Could Alex have put Haley in my trunk then? I thought back. The timing was perfect. I spoke without hesitation. Before I left the Blackwood estate, I saw Alex near my car. "I want to see the security footage from that time. I want proof." My words made Chloe's expression turn to ice. To her, I had been caught red-handed and was now shamelessly trying to frame Alex. I was beyond saving. "That won't be necessary," she said coldly. "I'll testify myself. This man was our nanny. He thought that after taking care of Haley for a few years, he could force his way into our family. Alex is my fiancé. This man is just desperate and spouting nonsense." The color drained from my face. I stared at Chloe, unable to believe she would lie so brazenly, twisting the truth into something so ugly. Perhaps she saw the utter despair in my eyes, because she paused. "Considering he took care of Haley for many years," she told the officers, "we won't press kidnapping charges. Just hold him for a few days to teach him a lesson." With that, Chloe turned and left, giving me no chance to say another word. I tried desperately to explain that I was Haley's father, but with both Chloe and Haley denying it, nobody believed me. I was sentenced to 3 days in a holding cell. It wasn't a long time, but it was enough to completely break me. For those 3 days, I huddled in the corner of my cell. I didn't eat, I didn't drink, and I didn't speak to anyone. By the time I was released, I was gaunt, with dark circles under my eyes. I felt so weak that a strong gust of wind could have knocked me over. I felt like a zombie, desperate to escape that nightmarish place, but I was immediately blinded by camera flashes and bombarded with aggressive questions from a crowd of reporters. "Sir, is it true you were the Blackwood family nanny? Did you kidnap the child to try and force Chloe Blackwood to marry you so you could get a piece of the family fortune? Were you pushed over the edge by the news of Chloe Blackwood and Alex Vance's spectacular engagement? What on earth made you think a simple nanny had a shot with someone like Chloe Blackwood? Were you delusional?" The questions were a barrage of mockery, mixed with insults and curses hurled from the surrounding crowd. My body was shaking uncontrollably. I shoved one of them out of the way, broke through the circle, and scrambled into my car. I pulled out the divorce papers. Chloe and I were married. Alex is the one who broke up our marriage. It's all right here, written clear as day, but in the chaos, no one was listening. Someone snatched the papers from my hand, ripped them to pieces, and threw them to the ground. He's living in a fantasy world. He's actually started to believe his own lies. Haha, seriously, who would be blind enough to choose a vicious loser like him over a god like Alex Vance? I was shoved, spat on, and cursed at. A tidal wave of malice washed over me, threatening to drown me completely. Finally, the police intervened, worried the massive crowd would become dangerous, and began to disperse everyone. By the time the crowd was gone, my clothes were torn and filthy, and a red handprint was stinging on my cheek from where someone had slapped me. I staggered to my feet, wiped my grimy face, and sat in my car, staring blankly ahead. I don't know how long I sat there before the incessant buzzing of my phone pulled me back. I opened it to find my inbox flooded with messages from unknown numbers. Every single one was cursing me out, calling me a shameless monster for hurting a child. Some had even taken the humiliating photos from the crowd and photoshopped them, adding bloodstains and writing curses across my face. Maybe I was just in shock, but I felt numb. For a fleeting moment, I had the urge to just step on the gas and plow through them all, but I quickly reined myself in. The real culprits weren't these easily manipulated people. It was Chloe and Alex, and I would make them pay. I was leaving the country soon. I didn't have time to fight a protracted battle with Chloe. There was only one way to end this. I drove home and organized every useful document I had, creating a clear, chronological chain of evidence. Then, I made a call to the department handling my classified deployment. "Hello," I said. "After I've left the country, would it be possible for you to release this information on an official government channel?" "Yes, that's right, as long as it's published and can't be taken down." After years of being married to Chloe, I knew how the Blackwood family manipulated the media. Having an official government source release the information was the only way to ensure it wouldn't be buried. After they verified the authenticity of my evidence, the person on the other end gave me a firm answer. "You're serving this country as a hero, Mr. Miller. Protecting your reputation is our duty." With that confirmation, I breathed a long sigh of relief. The next morning, I boarded a flight overseas, heading for one of the most dangerous conflict zones in the world. Before takeoff, I glanced at my watch, my eyes cold. I hoped Chloe would enjoy my parting gift. As my plane was taking off, Chloe and Alex were just returning from their vacation abroad. Haley was sleeping peacefully in Alex's arms. Chloe saw the peaceful scene in her rearview mirror and couldn't help but smile. But then she thought about the storm brewing online, and her smile tightened. She had expected me to break down and come crawling back to her, begging for forgiveness. She never imagined I would just disappear without a word. Chloe felt a complex mix of emotions. As she was lost in thought, the sudden ringing of her phone shattered the quiet. Chloe frowned, but seeing it was her executive assistant, she answered. "Ms. Blackwood, we have a problem. Mr. Miller has released a statement on the internet. He's made his past marriage to you public." Chloe slammed on the brakes. "What happened? I told you to manage the narrative. I gave explicit orders that nothing damaging to the Blackwood family was to get out. You can't even handle one simple thing?" Before she could finish, her phone was overwhelmed by a sudden flood of incoming calls. She tried to decline them, but her phone was frozen, inundated with calls and texts, completely unusable. She glanced at the notifications. They were all messages cursing her, calling her an adulterer who had destroyed her ex-husband. The vicious language made her want to smash the phone against the dashboard. The ominous feeling in her gut intensified. Could my silence all this time have been me gathering my strength for one fatal blow? But that was impossible. He'd been out of the professional world for so long. How could he possibly have the connections to override her media control? Despite her disbelief, she didn't dare waste any time. She pulled out a backup phone and opened Twitter. She didn't even have to search. My name was at the very top of the trending list, marked with a fire emoji. Chloe's heart sank. She had never imagined I could escalate things to this level. She clicked on the topic and saw a post from an official government account. It stated that the truth behind the recent, sensational nanny kidnapping case had been fully investigated. The post explained that the so-called nanny was, in fact, the child's biological father. He had been thrown out of his home by his adulterous wife, framed for kidnapping on baseless charges, and subjected to a vicious campaign of online harassment. Below the official notice were links to notarized documents. Our divorce certificate, clearly stating the dates of our marriage and separation, and Haley's original birth certificate, proving beyond any doubt that I was her father, not some social climbing nanny. The story had already been a viral sensation. This sudden 180-degree reversal caused the internet to absolutely explode. The same people who had been baying for my blood were now stunned into silence. Faced with irrefutable proof, they realized they had been manipulated by Chloe and Alex. Instantly, they turned their fury on Chloe. Chloe Blackwood, have you no shame? Kicking out the husband who stood by you for years, all for your affair partner? You're not even human. My God, I thought kids didn't lie. I can't believe that little girl would deny her own father. What a little monster. And that Alex Vance, pretending to be some sensitive artist. I've never seen anything so disgusting. The guy who breaks up a marriage and then flaunts it with a proposal of the century? That shameless pair should be locked up. They're disgusting. Starting today, I'm boycotting all Blackwood Industries products. I refuse to give a single penny to a company run by someone so morally bankrupt. As the online outrage grew, the stock price of Blackwood Industries began to plummet. Within minutes, the drop was staggering. If it continued, it would trigger a panic sell-off. The company could be crippled by this scandal. Chloe watched it all happen, her hands shaking with rage. But she was powerless. There was nothing she could do about an official government source. Even with all the Blackwood family's influence, they couldn't touch a government entity. The only way to stop the bleeding was to get me to come forward and calm the storm. Chloe clenched her fists. The man was ruthless, using this to force her hand. And right now, she had no other choice. Swallowing her pride, Chloe dialed my number. All she got was an automated message. The number was unreachable. She tried again and again, but with the same result. It was ironic. I used to have a special ringtone for her, and I would answer her calls on the first ring. Now she couldn't get through at all. He had really learned his lesson. Chloe slammed her phone to the ground, her face a mask of fury. The loud crash startled Haley, who had been sleeping beside Alex, and she woke up crying. Not knowing what was happening, she began to wail. But Chloe was in no mood to comfort her. With a dark expression, she got out of the car, already planning to call her media contacts to try and kill the story. Haley looked over at Alex. He was also staring at his phone, his face pale. If Chloe was getting hit this hard, he was surely getting his share of the backlash too. His phone was blowing up with hateful texts and calls, and his Twitter feed had been flooded with hundreds of thousands of angry comments. Alex was used to being admired and adored. He had never been publicly reviled like this, treated like vermin. Watching the endless stream of comments, filled with vicious insults about his shameless behavior, he felt like he was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Haley's shrill crying grated on his ears. His face flushed red, as if all the blood had rushed to his head. "Stop crying," he snapped. "You're so loud." Alex had no patience for comforting a child. His angry shout shocked Haley into silence. She just stared at him, stunned. Why was the gentle Alex, who always played with her and gave her treats, suddenly acting so mean? If it had been her daddy, he would have seen her crying and immediately asked if she was hurt or feeling sick. He wouldn't have relaxed until he was sure she was okay. Haley vaguely sensed that something had changed, but she was too scared to dwell on it. She stayed quiet, though tears continued to stream silently down her face. When Chloe returned, this was the scene that greeted her. Alex, texting with an annoyed expression, and Haley, huddled in the far corner of her seat, her face red from stifling her sobs, too afraid to make a sound. The sight made Chloe frown. In front of her, Alex had always acted as if he adored children, and he had always been so good with Haley. But this scene made her question if any of that had been real. The doubt lasted only a moment before she pushed it down. Subconsciously, she refused to admit she could have been so wrong about someone. She took a deep breath. "Alex, don't worry about this. I'll figure out a way to handle it. Just take Haley home and let her rest." Alex snapped out of his funk. Seeing Chloe, he smoothed the irritation from his face. "I know. he said gently, turning to Haley. Come on, Haley, let's go home. We shouldn't bother your mom right now. Haley instinctively didn't want to go with Alex, but seeing the dark look on her mother's face, she didn't dare protest. She just quietly went with him. Chloe, meanwhile, drove straight to her office to meet with her PR and marketing teams to figure out how to contain the crisis. They couldn't get the official statement taken down, and I was completely unreachable. Their only option was to create a distraction, to shift the public's focus before more damage was done to the Blackwood brand. Just then, one of her investigators discovered that I had once received a substantial gift of assets from her father, and immediately reported it to her. As Chloe looked over the list of assets, she finally understood the source of my confidence. No wonder I had been so willing to defy her. A counter-strategy immediately formed in her mind. She released old photos and stories from her high school romance with Alex, along with a statement explaining that her marriage to me had been arranged by her family while she was in a coma. The statement claimed we had no emotional connection and that we had mutually agreed to divorce, with me accepting a generous financial settlement to leave quietly. But then, it alleged, I had suddenly reneged on the deal, attempting to kidnap our child to extort even more money from her. Everything that followed was simply her trying to teach me a lesson. Chloe then publicly released the list of assets in my name. The enormous sum was calculated to stir up public resentment and envy. At the very least, the narrative would no longer be so one-sidedly against her. Soon after the post went live, it had the desired effect. Seeing the vast amount of wealth, many people grew envious and turned on me, calling me a greedy, insatiable gold digger who deserved everything that had happened to him. By the time Chloe had finished managing the crisis, it was late at night. Seeing that public opinion had successfully been swayed, she finally let out a sigh of relief. To make sure nothing else went wrong, she decided to sleep at the office. In the middle of the night, she was jolted awake by a sharp, stabbing pain in her stomach. She realized that in the chaos since her return, she had been so busy that she hadn't eaten in over 12 hours, having had only a few sips of water. I used to text her throughout the day, reminding her to eat. She was always annoyed by it, but she had never been in so much pain from hunger before. Chloe's mind drifted. A moment later, she realized she was thinking about me. She shot up in her chair, running her hands through her hair in frustration. Was she going crazy? How could she be thinking about the good things I did after I had just caused her such a massive headache? Annoyed with herself, she opened her phone, half hoping to see a message from me. Instead, her eyes were drawn back to the PR statement she had released. But to her surprise, many of the top comments calling me greedy had vanished. In their place was a new wave of comments, all directed at her. What was happening? Chloe felt like she was losing her mind. A few hours ago, everything was going her way. How could the narrative have shifted so dramatically while she was asleep? Forcing herself to be patient, she checked the retweets and saw it immediately. The same official government account that had defended me had now shared her post, and it had attached a new statement, along with more evidence. This time, it included the official records of her father gifting the assets to me, and documents showing that I had used those same assets to establish a charitable foundation for sick children from low-income families. Crucially, the foundation had been established long before this scandal broke, proving it wasn't some last-minute stunt to win public sympathy. The evidence was undeniable. I had never cared about her money. In fact, I had given it all away to help others. There was more, years of medical records from her checkups and rehabilitation sessions, all meticulously organized and preserved by me, a testament to the years of dedicated care I had provided. This detailed chain of evidence completely demolished Chloe's web of lies. And because of her misleading post, the official statement now included a direct condemnation of Blackwood Industries for using improper means to spread disinformation, engage in slander, and manipulate public discourse, stating such behavior would not be tolerated. It was only then that Chloe grasped the true severity of the situation. Before, she thought she could muddy the waters and save her reputation. Now, she had been publicly shamed, and the incident officially labeled as a malicious act by a government body. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't bear to imagine how much worse things would get. If she couldn't get this under control, Blackwood Industries, her family's legacy, could be ruined under her leadership. Chloe immediately started calling everyone she knew, trying to pull some strings, but no one dared to get involved. As the news spread, corporate partners began calling one after another, all wanting to terminate their contracts to avoid being associated with the scandal. Chloe was overwhelmed. Every attempt she made to fix things failed. The cramping in her stomach intensified into a sharp, stabbing pain, but she had no choice but to push through it. But when she arrived at the office the next morning, she was greeted by a stack of resignation letters. Her top executives, seeing how cruelly she had treated the man who had cared for her since she was in a coma, feared for their own futures. They worried that after years of loyal service, they too could be cast aside without a second thought. They were all looking for a way out. Chloe couldn't believe it. At the company's most difficult moment, the leadership team she had personally cultivated was abandoning her. Her face went pale as she clutched her aching stomach. "If you want to leave, then get out. All of you." As she finished speaking, she suddenly coughed, spitting up a mouthful of blood before collapsing to the floor, unconscious. Terrified that something was seriously wrong, her remaining staff called an ambulance and then contacted Alex. Alex rushed to the hospital to find Chloe lying weakly in a bed, her face as white as a sheet. He was used to seeing her as powerful and confident. The Blackwood family's influence was immense. He never thought she would be unable to handle a scandal created by someone like me. Alex had been so vilified online that he could barely leave his house. He felt a surge of resentment, but he knew that if anything happened to Chloe, his own future would be bleak. He hurried to handle the paperwork and tests. Once Chloe was settled in her room, he rushed home to personally cook a pot of restorative soup, bringing it back to the hospital with Haley in tow. By the time Alex returned, Chloe was awake and already on the phone, negotiating a contract termination with a partner. When she saw him, whether because of her illness or something else, the intense passion she once felt for him seemed to have cooled. She just gave him a slight nod. Alex's heart sank. Was it possible that this whole mess was making her reconsider their relationship? If she left him, how would he ever get into the Blackwood family? How would he use their resources to restore his own family's fortune? Alex pushed his anxieties aside. He took Haley's hand and spoke in a gentle voice. "Chloe, I made you some soup. Haley was so worried about you, so I brought her along to see you." Seeing Haley, the color returned to Chloe's face slightly. She managed a soft sound of acknowledgement. Alex quickly opened the container, scooped out a spoonful, blew on it to cool it, and offered it to her. Chloe had been hungry for a long time, so she took a sip, but the moment it touched her tongue, her expression froze. The soup wasn't bad, but it wasn't like the kind I used to make, which had always been perfectly balanced to soothe her stomach. But it was a kind gesture from Alex, so she forced herself to drink most of it. A few minutes later, she vomited it all back up. This time was much worse. After emptying her stomach, she began vomiting blood. The bright red stains on the pristine white sheets were a horrifying sight. Haley was terrified and burst into tears. "Mommy, please don't die. I'm gonna call Daddy. He'll know what to do." Alex's face fell. "Calling me now? That would only remind Chloe of how well I used to take care of her." But Chloe, at her weakest, didn't object. It wasn't just the searing pain in her stomach. The crisis at the company was overwhelming her. If she could just see me, maybe she could sort things out. Haley made the call. After a long time, someone answered. Through her tears, she pleaded, "Daddy, Mommy's stomach is really, really sick. We're at the hospital and she can't eat anything. Can you please bring some of that soup you used to make for her?" But the voice that replied was that of a cool, professional woman. "I'm sorry, Haley. Your father is unable to take your call at this time. However, he has retained me as his attorney and has instructed me to arrange for a monthly stipend to be transferred from his foundation to an account for you. It will be available for you to access when you turn 18 as child support. As for anything else, I'm afraid I cannot help you." Haley was stunned by the response, fresh tears welling in her eyes. Chloe's expression, however, turned thunderous. She didn't believe for a second that the woman was just a lawyer. "She must be my new girlfriend. No wonder he was so eager to divorce me. He must have been cheating all along." That would explain how a simple house husband who only knew how to cook and clean suddenly had the connections to get the government involved. This woman must be someone important. The thought made Chloe's face darken further. She snatched the phone. "Do you really expect me to believe that nonsense? I bet Ethan is standing right there next to you. I have to say, madam, I'm truly impressed with your taste in men. You have a real talent for getting involved with other people's families." The lawyer on the other end sighed. "Ma'am, please refrain from making baseless accusations. My client is, as I said, unavailable to see you. If you continue with these slanderous remarks, I will be forced to take legal action. That is, unless you want the Blackwood name to become even more infamous than it already is." With that, the line went dead. Hearing the dial tone, Chloe threw the phone onto the bed, her face growing even paler. The outburst frightened Haley so much that her tears stopped, and she didn't dare say another word. Chloe's face was a storm cloud. The thought that I might have been cheating on her all along unleashed a rage she couldn't control. She wanted to call her contacts and have me and my other woman blacklisted to make me pay for crossing her. But her hands were tied. She didn't know who this woman was, and she couldn't risk bringing any more trouble to her already floundering company. For the next few weeks, Chloe laid low. She paid off a few media outlets to leak a couple of celebrity scandals, creating a new distraction that finally took the spotlight off of her and Alex. But the damage was done. Blackwood Industries had taken a major hit. Key partners had pulled out, and many senior employees who had been with her for years had resigned. As a result, even though she was sick, Chloe couldn't rest. She had to personally manage every detail of the company's affairs. The stress of work, combined with her chronic stomach pain, was taking its toll. She stopped eating the food Alex brought, instead hiring a private chef who specialized in therapeutic diets to create meals for her. But it only helped a little. She still couldn't eat much, and she lost weight rapidly. The constant pain made it impossible to sleep, and she began to look haggard and worn down. Alex stayed by her side at first, but he soon grew tired of her short temper, which was made worse by her constant pain. On top of that, his reputation in the country was ruined. He was treated like a pariah everywhere he went. So, using the excuse that he was taking Haley on a trip to cheer her up, he left the country. Chloe knew exactly what he was doing. She calmly agreed, but inside, she felt a bitter resentment. Years ago, when she was in a coma after her accident, Alex hadn't come back for her. She had never blamed him for that. But his actions now proved that his excuse back then, that he couldn't return because of his studies, was just that, an excuse. The truth was painfully clear. Alex was happy to share in her wealth, but he had no interest in sharing her burdens. The decisive choice she had made, casting me aside for him, had turned into a cruel joke at her own expense. And then Chloe remembered. She remembered when she had first woken up, when the prospect of walking again seemed impossible. Her temper back then had been even worse than it was now. But I had been endlessly patient with her. No matter how many times she screamed or threw things, I never left her side. A few times, she had even hurt me by accident, but I always insisted on finishing her physical therapy routine before I tended to my own injuries. Chloe tried to force herself not to think of me. She told herself that all her current misery was my fault. But the human mind is a strange thing. The more she tried not to think about me, the more my memory flooded her thoughts. She remembered the early days after she woke up, when her body was still weak. She remembered me supporting her through the painful rehabilitation, my face lighting up with pure, childish joy at every tiny bit of progress she made. She remembered me spending hours every day researching new ways to nourish her body, new massage techniques, new treatments. She even remembered the time I tested a new medication on myself to check for side effects and ended up in the hospital. She remembered the few times she had given me some small, insignificant gift on a whim. They were worthless trinkets, but my face would light up with such surprise, my eyes shining as brightly as stars. It was only then that Chloe realized it wasn't that she didn't care about me. She had never consciously tried to remember these things, but through years of constant companionship, my presence had woven itself into the very fabric of her being, an inseparable part of her life. And with that realization came a sudden, overwhelming urge to see me. Chloe could no longer suppress her desire to know how I was doing. She patiently composed a careful message. "How have you been? About what happened before? I was impulsive, and I did things that hurt you. If you're willing, could we meet? There's so much I want to say to you. Maybe we can clear up the misunderstandings between us." After sending the text, she sat on her hospital bed, checking her phone every few minutes, terrified she might miss a reply. But the minutes ticked by, and the message thread remained silent. There was no sign of a response. Chloe felt an unfamiliar agitation. In the past, whenever she contacted me, I would reply instantly. If I ever missed a message, I would always apologize and explain why. She was the one who would frequently ignore my messages. Now, the roles were reversed. She was the one left waiting. For the first time, Chloe understood how agonizing it was to wait for a reply that might never come. After checking her phone for the 100th time and seeing nothing, she hid the conversation thread, trying to fool herself into forgetting about it, and forced her attention back to her work. But unlike before, she couldn't focus. Her mind kept wandering. Finally, a notification sound chimed from her phone. Chloe immediately dropped the file she was holding and grabbed it. But it wasn't a reply from me. It was an alert from her bank. Alex had exceeded the spending limit on the supplementary card she had given him. In the past, she wouldn't have given it a second thought. But the irony was bitter. Here she was, lying in a hospital bed, while Alex was on the other side of the world, spending her money without a care. She thought of all the expensive cars and properties she had gifted him since his return, without a moment's hesitation. Then she thought of the cruel divorce settlement she had forced on me, leaving me with nothing. A bitter taste filled her mouth. If their roles were reversed, would she ever be able to forgive so easily? Chloe took a deep breath, abandoning her previous approach. She typed a new message. Haley misses you a lot. If you're willing, maybe you could see her. She had racked her brain but couldn't think of many instances where she had been genuinely kind to me. It seemed their entire relationship had been me trying to give her warmth and her offering almost nothing in return. So using Haley was her only option. After all, I had raised her since she was a baby. We shared a bond of blood that could never be broken. The fact that I had donated all that money but still arranged for Haley's child support proved that I still cared about her. Chloe suddenly felt a wave of relief. Thank God they had Haley. Without her, the last thread connecting us would have been completely severed. But the message she sent with such confidence met with the same deafening silence. It was as if I no longer cared at all. Chloe felt lost, an emotion she rarely experienced. She had never considered the possibility that I would truly be done with her, that even using Haley wouldn't be enough to make me come back. It seemed I had truly moved on, that they no longer held any power over me. A wave of panic and helplessness washed over her. Suddenly, she couldn't stand to just sit in that hospital room, waiting. She immediately thought to contact my friends or family, but then she drew a blank. She had never paid any attention to my life outside of her. All she knew was that my parents had died when I was young and that I'd been raised in foster care. After we married, my entire world had revolved around taking care of her and Haley at the Blackwood estate. That was why she had been so certain I would never dare to leave her, or at least not with such finality. She never imagined reality would hit her so hard. Chloe's only option was to hire a private investigator. She told him to find me no matter the cost. The investigator quickly found a few people I had been in contact with, and Chloe began calling them one by one. But because the scandal of her affair and how she had treated me was so public, most of them gave her an earful before hanging up on her. Desperate, Chloe resorted to lying, telling them that Haley was sick and was asking for me. Only then did they talk to her. But their answers were all the same. They didn't know where I was and hadn't heard from me. The investigator reported the same thing. After the day the government released the information, it was as if I had vanished into thin air. It was then that a real panic began to set in. She couldn't believe I was completely unreachable, that I wouldn't even respond to the news that Haley was sick. Keep looking, she ordered the investigator. Check if he's left the country. Unwilling to give up, Chloe decided to go back to the house and search through the things I'd left behind, hoping to find some clue. But when she walked through the door, she found Haley in the living room, controller in hand, eyes glued to the television. So engrossed she didn't even notice her mother had come home. The floor around her was littered with snack wrappers and takeout containers. She had clearly been living on junk food. Her clothes were dirty, and she looked nothing like the well-groomed, adorable child she used to be. She looked more like a little street urchin. Chloe's face darkened. Hadn't Alex said he was taking Haley abroad for a trip? Why was she here, alone, surrounded by junk food and video games? Chloe snatched the controller out of Haley's hands. Haley was about to protest, but when she saw it was her mother, she fell silent, not daring to say a word. Why are you here by yourself? Where's Alex? Why didn't he take you with him? Haley looked confused. You mean Alex? He said he was going overseas. He left me some money and told me to be a good girl, and that he'd bring me a present when he got back. Chloe gritted her teeth, a vein throbbing in her temple. So Alex had just been paying lip service. In reality, he had abandoned Haley, leaving her home all alone. It was a good thing Haley was old enough to order food for herself and just play video games. If she had been younger, left alone for that long, something terrible could have happened. If I had been there, I never would have let Haley live like this. The thought triggered another memory. She had been so certain that I was the one who had drugged Haley. But now she wasn't so sure. My desperate pleas from that day echoed in her mind. I had begged her to check the security cameras, to see for herself who had done such a monstrous thing to our daughter. Chloe called the housekeeper and asked her to get Haley cleaned up. Then, she hurried to the security room to review the footage from that day. She quickly located the files for the correct date, but she found something strange. All the recordings from that specific day had been deleted. A cold suspicion formed in her mind. She dug her nails into her palm. The truth was obvious. I hadn't been back to the house. I had no opportunity to delete the footage. Only Alex would have done something like that to cover his tracks. Suppressing her rage, Chloe called her company's IT department and ordered them to recover the deleted files. Alex hadn't wiped the data properly. He had only deleted it. Recovering the files was a simple task. A short while later, she was watching the recovered footage. She saw Alex, looking around furtively, carrying an unconscious Haley and carefully placing her in the trunk of my car. Chloe finally lost control and smashed her fist into the monitor. How could she have been so stupid, so completely fooled by his act of being a loving father figure? Then she gave a bitter, self-mocking laugh. She had known all along. Alex had no blood ties to Haley. How could she have ever believed his affection could compare to that of a real father? She had been willfully blind, and now she was paying the price for her stupidity and her cruelty. Chloe's eyes turned to ice. She immediately called her bank and had Alex's supplementary credit card canceled. Then she made a copy of the video and sent it to her lawyer. She was going to sue Alex and make him pay for his actions. Alex, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to the events back home, enjoying his time abroad. Since his family's downfall, he hadn't been able to enjoy the pleasure of spending lavishly. But now, with Chloe's credit card, he was living it up, basking in the envious stares of strangers. He was finally starting to forget the humiliation of being publicly scorned. "I'll take this one and that one over there," Alex said, pointing to a new model of a luxury watch. He handed over the card without a second thought. But a moment later, the clerk informed him the card had been declined for insufficient funds. Alex was stunned. It was Chloe's card. How could it possibly have insufficient funds? The only explanation was that Chloe had canceled it. The thought made him break out in a cold sweat. He mumbled an awkward apology to the clerk and quickly left the store, feeling the curious stares of the other customers on his back. Once he was somewhere private, Alex called Chloe. She didn't yell. She just calmly asked him why he had gone abroad without Haley. Alex felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't wanted to drag Ethan's brat along on his vacation. Besides, he'd left her plenty of money. What could possibly happen to her at the Blackwood estate? That's what he thought, but he put on an innocent voice. Haley said she didn't want to come, that traveling was too tiring. I thought it would be better to let her rest at home. Is she upset about something? He made it sound as if he were the victim, and Haley was the one being difficult. No, she just said she misses you, Chloe replied evenly. Actually, I have some gifts for you too. I know you've been through a lot lately because of me. Come home. Her voice was calm, but there was an icy edge to it that Alex failed to notice. He assumed the credit card issue had been a simple mistake and readily agreed to return. After hanging up, Chloe went downstairs. The housekeeper had helped Haley bathe and change into clean clothes. When Haley saw her mother, she immediately looked down at the floor, as if expecting to be scolded. Chloe felt a strange pang in her chest. Haley had always been a bit spoiled, but she had also been a confident, happy child. A few days under Alex's care had turned her into this timid, fearful creature. Chloe gently stroked Haley's hair. "Haley, do you miss your daddy?" Haley hesitated, as if trying to figure out the right answer. Her cautiousness broke Chloe's heart. She realized with a jolt that Haley had been trying to please her all this time. Her closeness to Alex hadn't been genuine. It had been a desperate attempt to avoid being abandoned by her own mother. "Don't be scared," Chloe said softly. "I just want to know what you really think. You can tell me the truth." Haley hesitated, then gave a small nod. At first, it had been fun not having her dad around to tell her what to do. But after a while, it started to feel wrong, especially with Alex. She could do whatever she wanted, but he never asked if she'd eaten well, or if she was warm enough. Sometimes, she would catch him looking at her with an expression of pure annoyance. It made Haley afraid to do anything wrong. She started choosing her words carefully, terrified that if she made Alex angry, he would convince her mother to send her away. "I kind of miss Daddy," Haley admitted quietly. The words sent a pang of sorrow through Chloe's heart. Chloe bent down and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "It's okay," she whispered. "He'll come back. It will just take some time." She was saying it as much for herself as for Haley. Chloe stayed with Haley until she fell asleep, finally getting a moment to herself. Before, she had always told herself she was too busy with work, and since I was at home with nothing to do, it was only natural that I handle everything related to Haley. She had assumed it was easy. Now that she was the one doing it, she realized just how wrong she had been. She had taken me for granted, assuming I would just silently devote my life to her and our daughter, never asking for anything in return. Just then, she heard footsteps outside. It was Alex, holding up a beautifully wrapped gift bag with a smile. "Chloe, I picked out a little something for you. Want to see?" Chloe found it deeply ironic. He had bought it with her money and was now presenting it to her as a gift. The nerve of him, but she kept her expression neutral. "Why don't you see the gift I have for you first?" she said calmly. Suspecting nothing, Alex sat down beside her and casually draped his arm around her shoulders. Chloe immediately shrugged him off. She opened the laptop on the table and played a video file. Alex was confused at first, but as he watched, the color drained from his face. "Chloe," he stammered, "what is this? Shouldn't you know better than anyone? You're the one who drugged Haley and put her in my car to frame me for kidnapping. Has your memory gotten that bad in just a few days?" Alex never imagined he would be found out. A storm of panic raged within him. He looked at Chloe in terror. "Chloe, I didn't mean to. I was just so afraid Ethan would use Haley to keep bothering us. So I thought, I didn't want to, I did it because I love you so much." "Because you love me?" Chloe suddenly laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Your love was abandoning me when I was at my lowest, then coming back after I recovered to cry about how hard your life has been. Your love is running off to another country the second things get tough, enjoying everything I've given you while refusing to share a single one of my burdens." Alex felt his face flush with shame. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Everything she said was true, so he dropped the act. The gentle, refined mask fell away, replaced by a sarcastic sneer. "Yeah, well, you fell for it, didn't you? Ethan devoted his life to taking care of you, and what did he get for it? You kicked him out without a penny to his name. What right do you have to ask anyone to stand by you through thick and thin? Do you even deserve it?" Chloe wanted to scream at him, but the words caught in her throat. Even Alex thought she didn't deserve my devotion. Maybe she really didn't. "You're right," she said, her voice hollow. "I was blind. I threw away the one person who truly loved me for someone like you. I brought all of this on myself. But now, it's time to settle the score between us." From the moment her suspicions about Alex began, Chloe had her investigators dig into his recent activities. The results were horrifying. As she finished speaking, the wail of police sirens grew louder outside. A moment later, several officers entered the room to arrest Alex. Alex's face went white with shock. He never imagined Chloe would be so ruthless. "Sir, you're under arrest on suspicion of slander, defamation, and administering a controlled substance to a minor, endangering her life. Please come with us." "Chloe, I was wrong. I didn't mean it. I'll never do it again, I swear." Seeing that things were not going his way, Alex dropped his defiant attitude and looked at Chloe with pleading eyes, begging her not to send him to jail. "My lawyer will be in touch," Chloe said, completely unmoved. She watched as the police led him away. As Alex's shouts faded into the distance, Chloe finally sat down. Her fingers traced over a family portrait that she had taken from Haley's room. Staring at my face in the photo, she whispered to herself, "Ethan, for everything you suffered, he will pay it back 1,000 times over. So please, don't be angry anymore, okay?" But the photograph was just a photograph. It offered no reply. Alex was taken into custody. The police investigation revealed that not only had he drugged Haley to frame me, but he had also hired an online PR firm to orchestrate the massive wave of online hate directed at me. He was the one who had deliberately leaked my private information, posting my phone number and address online, ensuring my life would be constantly harassed. It was his deliberate escalation that had whipped the public into such a frenzy that the government had been forced to step in. Chloe was surprised when she saw the evidence. She had wanted to teach Alex a lesson, but now it looked like his crimes were serious enough to land him in prison. But then again, he had brought it all on himself. Chloe left the lawsuit against Alex entirely in her lawyer's hands. He would face the full consequences of the law. Chloe explained everything that had happened to Haley. When Haley learned the truth about Alex, she realized how naive she had been. She couldn't believe she had actually thought a stranger, someone with no emotional or biological connection to her, could truly care for her. "Mommy," she said, her voice small, I think I did a lot of things that hurt Daddy." Haley remembered all the hurtful things she had said about me just to get Alex's approval, and her face grew pale. Before, she had thought her mom did everything to support the family. Her dad just did chores that anyone could do. He wasn't important. But now that he was really gone, now that he didn't care about her anymore, Haley was starting to understand that the comfortable life she had always taken for granted had only been possible because of my constant effort. "I want to see Daddy. I want to tell him I'm sorry. I miss him, but he's never going to forgive us, is he?" Perhaps because Chloe had been paying more attention to her lately, Haley wasn't as timid as she had been. Seeing the fear on her daughter's face, Chloe's heart ached. "Of course he will," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "He wouldn't be that heartless. You're his daughter. How could he ever abandon you?" She was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince Haley. In the weeks that followed, Chloe never stopped looking for me, but it was fruitless. It was as if I had simply vanished off the face of the earth. She kept thinking that if I knew Alex was gone, if I knew how much Haley missed me, surely my heart would soften. Alex was quickly convicted on charges of invasion of privacy, incitement, and defamation, and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. When the verdict was announced, it was quickly picked up by online news sites and went viral. What goes around comes around. That's what you get for breaking up a family. I hope every person who knowingly gets involved with a married person ends up just like him. Don't forget Chloe Blackwood in all this. She's just as bad. Alex was torn to shreds online, and Chloe wasn't spared either. But this time, she didn't get angry or try to defend herself. She just quietly accepted the criticism. She just hoped that somehow I would see that she was trying to atone, and that maybe, just maybe, I would give her one more chance to see me. As Chloe was lost in these thoughts, her phone suddenly rang. She looked at the screen and her heart stopped. It was my number. She shot upright, her hand trembling as she answered the call. Ethan, are you willing to see me and Haley? Chloe froze, her hand trembling. But the voice on the other end wasn't mine. It was a woman, her tone cool and professional. Ms. Blackwood, I have a letter for you and Haley, left by Mr. Miller. It will explain his current situation. Chloe's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She wanted to demand to know who this woman was to me, but she knew she no longer had any right to ask. She swallowed her anger and managed a quiet sound of assent. After receiving her confirmation, the woman said she would have the item delivered to Chloe's office and then promptly hung up. Chloe stood up and began to pace her office. The thought of that woman being with me filled her with a jealous rage. She wanted to find her and chase her away, but she knew that would only destroy what little was left of our relationship. She forced herself to push the impulse down and waited anxiously for the letter to arrive. A short time later, the letter was delivered. Chloe stared at my handwriting on the envelope. It was so familiar, yet it felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. She took a deep breath and slowly opened it. Inside was an enlistment form. It was for an overseas peacekeeping mission. Attached to it was a waiver, stating that I alone was responsible for my life or death. My signature was at the bottom. Chloe couldn't believe what she was seeing. All this time, she had thought I was just hiding somewhere, trying to make her and Haley realize how much they needed me. She thought that one day, when they finally understood, I would come back. This letter shattered that fantasy completely. She never, ever imagined I would do something like this. When she saw the words on the waiver, releasing everyone from responsibility for my life, she felt something inside her break. Why would he make such a monumental decision without talking to his family? Didn't he know how many people would be devastated if something happened to him? But then, a cold wave of realization washed over her. She remembered that time. She had been lost in the joy of her reunion with Alex, chasing the fantasy of rekindling her first love. Family, responsibility, she had thrown it all away. She had even deliberately humiliated me in front of a crowd of people, all just to amuse Alex. What right did she have to expect me to consider her or our family when I made my choice? The family had abandoned me first. My so-called family hadn't sheltered me from the storm. They were the storm. If I hadn't been completely and utterly disappointed, no, devastated by my wife and child, I never would have made such a drastic choice. Chloe's hand fell limply to her side. The letter drifted to the floor. She didn't bother to pick it up. She just stared blankly into space. She was learning a hard lesson. Sometimes, when you finally turn around, the person who was always waiting for you is no longer there. And I was never coming back. Chloe's heart felt hollow, like a vital piece had been carved out. She had treated me as if I were insignificant, but now that I was gone, the loss was unbearable. She didn't even know how she was going to explain this to Haley. How could she tell her that I wasn't coming back, that they might never see me again? In the end, all Chloe could do was lie. She told Haley that I had gone to study abroad and wouldn't be back for a long time. She said they shouldn't bother me, that they just had to wait for my anger to cool. Haley was heartbroken, but she was old enough to understand, and she agreed. Chloe, meanwhile, gathered all the belongings I had left behind. She began to go through them piece by piece. She had a sudden, desperate need to know what my life had been like during all those years she had paid me no mind. I had left in such a hurry, taking only the most essential documents. I had left a lot behind. Chloe found a notebook with her name written on the cover. She immediately opened it, curious about its contents. The entries were dated from years ago. They weren't diaries, but detailed logs of her health on specific days, followed by notes on different treatments and recipes. Many of the recipes for her therapeutic diet had been revised over and over again. The notes showed countless small adjustments, swapping out one ingredient for another, minutely changing the quantities. Every single recipe had been painstakingly refined, time and time again, until I had found the perfect balance for her specific constitution. Chloe couldn't describe the feeling in her heart. She had always dismissed my cooking and remedies as some self-satisfying hobby. She had only drunk them to humor me. She never realized that behind every seemingly simple meal was a universe of my meticulous, unwavering care. For all those years, despite receiving almost no encouragement from her, I had never once thought of giving up. A wave of shame washed over Chloe. She couldn't believe she had so shamelessly accepted my years of devotion, only to treat it with such disdain. Her contempt had been so obvious that it had poisoned Haley against me, teaching our daughter to disrespect her own father. Chloe felt utterly lost. She wanted desperately to atone for what she had done, but she had no idea where to even begin to find me. Even after learning I was on a classified peacekeeping mission, Chloe didn't give up. She hired international investigators to try and track me down, but it was useless. With the mission being officially classified, no private citizen could get any information. And since they were officially divorced, she couldn't even use the status of family to request information. Living in the house that was so full of my memory, Chloe felt my presence fading day by day. She grew thinner, more haggard. It wasn't that she was deliberately neglecting herself because I was gone. It was just that every night, lying in the bed we used to share, the absence of my warmth beside her kept her awake. Every day, she ate off the dishes I had so carefully chosen, but the food tasted like ash in her mouth. As time went on, Chloe felt emotionally drained. She was exhausted all the time, even when she did nothing at all. Seeking some small measure of peace, Chloe began to change her ways. She stopped being a hands-off mother and started spending real time with Haley every day. She also began making large, anonymous donations to the charitable foundation I had started, and even assigned some of her best employees to help manage its operations. She didn't know when or even if I would ever return. All she could do was take care of the things that had been most important to me. That way, if I ever did come back, I wouldn't only see the worst of her. Maybe I would remember a little bit of the good, too. 3 years later, I was on a plane heading home. As I watched the landscape shrink below me, I was filled with a mix of emotions. When I first left, all I wanted was to go somewhere no one could find me, to get away from the mother and daughter who had broken my heart, and just be alone. But after my time here, after everything I had seen and experienced, after surviving more than one near-death encounter, all the things that had once caused me so much pain seemed distant and insignificant, like smoke. I looked down at the simple, hand-beaded bracelet on my wrist. It was a gift from an elderly local woman I had helped, a thank you for getting her life-saving medication in time. It wasn't valuable, but every time I looked at it, I remembered the deep sense of purpose and fulfillment I felt in that moment. My backpack was filled with similar small treasures. I smiled. Leaving had been the right decision. It had shown me that I was capable of so much more than just revolving my life around Chloe and Haley. My world was so much bigger than the small universe of the Blackwood estate. Thinking of them, my smile faded slightly. After all this time, I assumed Alex and Chloe were probably married by now, and Haley had likely fully accepted him as her new dad. I had made my peace with Chloe, but Haley, she was still my daughter. Regardless of our relationship, I still felt a sense of responsibility for her. I worried about what kind of influence Alex might have had on her, whether he had encouraged her worst impulses. The thought gave me a headache, but the plane was taking off, so I pushed the thoughts aside. I would see for myself soon enough. If Haley was doing okay, I could rest easy and stay out of their lives for good. After a flight of more than 10 hours, we landed. As we deplaned, we were met with a formal hero's welcome. Government-sanctioned reporters were there to interview us. I wasn't comfortable in front of cameras. My experience with the media frenzy had left me with a deep-seated aversion to them. I found a quiet corner to stand in until the formalities were over. Then I collected my luggage and left. I figured that since I had stayed in the background, no one would have even noticed me. But I was wrong. People watching the news report, intending to praise the returning heroes, spotted a familiar face in the background. Hey, doesn't that guy in the corner on the right look familiar? I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Wait a minute, I remember. That's him. That's Chloe Blackwood's ex-husband, the one she kicked out for her affair partner. After 3 years, most people had forgotten about the scandal that had once been front-page news. But seeing me return as a national hero brought it all rushing back. The story went viral again, and with it, all the sordid details of what Chloe had done were dredged up, earning her a fresh round of public condemnation. When Chloe heard the news, she was confused. She had kept a low profile for years, and enough new scandals had come and gone that she hadn't been the target of public hatred for a long time. She clicked on one of the angry tweets directed at her, wondering if a business rival was behind it. But then, in the video attached to the tweet, she saw my face. She shot up from her chair so fast that it toppled over behind her, but she didn't even notice. Chloe stared at the phone, her eyes locked on the tiny face on the screen. It was me. I was really back. Over the past 3 years, Chloe had slowly grown accustomed to a life without me. But her recurring stomach pains and the longing for a father that Haley sometimes expressed were constant reminders of what she had lost. But she had always pushed those thoughts away. She was terrified of the possibility that I might never come back. She didn't know how she would live with that. If that happened, even if she hadn't killed me with her own hands, she would feel responsible. It was a possibility she couldn't bear to face. But thankfully, the worst hadn't happened. I was back, and I was whole. Chloe watched the fleeting glimpse of me on the screen almost greedily. I looked stronger than when I had left. My hair was cut short, and my once pale skin was tanned a healthy bronze. But it was my eyes that struck her. They were bright, alive with a vitality she had never seen before. Seeing that I was okay, that I was thriving, a weight lifted from Chloe's shoulders. Just then, her assistant came in to ask if she wanted them to do damage control online. Chloe shook her head. No, leave it. Just monitor it and make sure no one attacks Haley. The assistant was stunned, but Chloe truly didn't care about the online hate anymore. In a strange way, she was even grateful. If it weren't for those eagle-eyed netizens spotting me and immediately starting to curse her out, she wouldn't have known so quickly that I was back. Her first impulse was to call me. She found the number, which she knew by heart, but her finger hovered over the screen. The woman who feared nothing was suddenly terrified of being disappointed again. She wasn't afraid of my anger. She was afraid of my silence. She was afraid that if she pushed too hard, I would just disappear again. Chloe took a deep breath, fighting down the urge to call. She decided to wait. She had to give me space, at least for now. She couldn't make me feel like she was watching my every move. I was completely unaware of the storm I had caused online. After being away for so long, I felt like a stranger in my own country, like I had to relearn everything. The new apps, the new technology, it was all a bit overwhelming. I was too busy trying to catch up with the modern world to pay attention to anything else. Once I finally felt like I had a handle on everything I'd missed, I made time to visit the charitable foundation I had established. The staff there gave me a warm welcome. They were eager to show me their financial records and all the work they had accomplished over the years. As I looked through the thick binder filled with the names of the children we had helped, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying finally lifted. I was a complete novice at this sort of thing, and I had always worried that I would mismanage the funds her father had given me, that it would all go to waste. But now, seeing how many sick children we had actually helped, I could finally rest easy. I glanced over the financial statements. The details were beyond me, but one thing stood out: a large, consistent donation coming in every single month from an external source. I was curious. What's this from? That's a donation to the foundation from a corporation. The staffer looked uncomfortable as he spoke. I frowned. Is there some reason you can't tell me? No, it's just, the donor is Chloe Blackwood. Ms. Blackwood. I was just worried you wouldn't be happy to hear that. But we figured the money could help so many more children, so we decided to accept it. I just nodded. I didn't have a strong reaction, but I couldn't help but wonder what she was up to. Why would Chloe be so generous? Was this another scheme? Was she planning to use these donations to frame me for something down the line? It seemed unlikely, but after everything that had happened, I had absolutely no trust in her. Worried about potential complications, I contacted the lawyer who had helped me before. When she heard my concerns, she suggested we meet with Chloe and draw up a formal contract, with her present, to avoid any future misunderstandings. I agreed immediately. I got my old SIM card and put it in my new phone. The moment I turned it on, it was flooded with years' worth of notifications from missed calls and texts. I deleted them all without looking and then found Chloe's number in my contacts. Chloe was in the middle of a board meeting. When her phone vibrated, she felt a flash of annoyance at the interruption. But when she saw the name on the screen, she completely forgot where she was or what she was doing. She immediately held up a hand, signaling for a pause, and stepped out to take the call. She left the entire boardroom staring at each other in stunned silence. Everyone knew Ms. Blackwood was a notorious workaholic. Who on earth could be important enough to make her walk out of a meeting? Chloe walked quickly out of the room, but her heart was beating even faster. She took a moment to suppress a wave of excitement before finally answering. Hello. Chloe struggled to keep her voice steady. Is this Chloe Blackwood? My own voice was perfectly level. This is Ethan Miller. I need to discuss something with you. Do you have time to meet? Yes, she said a little too quickly. When? I can meet whenever. This afternoon, then. I'll text you the address. I hung up without another word and sent her the address of the law firm. Chloe saved the address immediately. She walked back into the boardroom, announced the meeting was postponed, and then called Haley. Haley, your father's back. Do you want to go see him? Haley was quiet for a moment, a flicker of happiness in her eyes. But then her face fell, and she looked down. I want to see Daddy, she mumbled. But, will he want to see me? In the years I'd been gone, Haley had slowly come to understand how much a father truly meant. How could any child not feel a pang of envy seeing other kids out with both their parents? And as she got older, she began to understand just how cruel she had been, publicly disowning her own father just to please someone else. But there had been no chance to apologize, no way to fix her mistake. She had simply had to accept the fact that her father was gone from her life. Now, hearing I was back, she desperately wanted to see me, but she was terrified I was still angry, that I wouldn't want to see her at all. Of course he will, Chloe said, her voice softer than usual. You're his daughter. You're the most important person in the world to him. How could he not want to see you? Chloe's heart ached. Without a father's love, Haley had been forced to grow up too fast. But she couldn't blame me for leaving. She could only blame herself for being so blind, so cruel. Okay, I'll go, Haley agreed. Chloe immediately drove to the school to pick her up. She took Haley shopping for a new outfit, and after they were both carefully dressed, they drove to the address I had sent. But when they arrived, Chloe saw it was a law firm. She couldn't help but frown. Why would he ask to meet here? Her mind immediately went to the female lawyer who had handled my affairs before. Was it possible they were really together? At the thought, Chloe's grip on Haley's hand tightened unconsciously, and she didn't realize it until Haley cried out in pain. She forced a smile. Sorry, sweetie. Mommy's just a little nervous. Let's go inside. Chloe led Haley inside. After she gave her name, the receptionist showed them to a conference room. When she opened the door, she saw me sitting at the table, reviewing some documents. My lawyer was there as well, but they were seated at a professional distance. It was clearly just a business relationship. The sight made Chloe breathe a quiet sigh of relief. Haley, however, saw me and her eyes immediately welled with tears. Daddy, she whispered. I looked up, and for a moment, I was taken aback. Hearing her call me that felt like hearing a voice from another lifetime. The little girl who used to follow me everywhere, calling me Daddy 100 times a day, hadn't called me that once since Alex came into the picture. She had even denied I was her father in front of everyone. It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt, but seeing her now, looking so small and vulnerable, my heart softened. You've gotten so tall, I said. How have you been? Haley glanced at Chloe, who gave her an encouraging nod. She cautiously walked over to me and started telling me about her life. She was in elementary school now, getting good grades, and she got along well with her teachers and friends. Hearing that she was doing well, I felt a sense of relief. I started to reach out to pat her on the head, but then I stopped, the gesture feeling unnatural. The scars from what they had done ran deep. I found myself flinching away from even that small gesture of affection. Chloe saw my hesitation, and the light in her eyes dimmed. But then, a look of resignation settled on her face. If her own family had betrayed her like that, she wouldn't be able to trust anyone either. Haley, why don't you wait outside for a minute? Your father and I need to talk. Though she looked reluctant, Haley nodded and quietly left the room. Chloe was the first to speak. You're the one who called this meeting. What's it about? I collected myself, my emotions settling back into a calm neutrality. I pushed a file across the table toward her. Ms. Blackwood, I only learned upon my return that you've been making significant donations to my foundation. I don't know what your motives are, but to avoid any potential issues, I'd like to clarify a few details. For instance, I need to confirm that these are not marital assets from a subsequent marriage. I don't want the foundation to be dragged into a property dispute down the line. Chloe's brow furrowed. Wait, what are you talking about? Marital property? I never remarried. I was surprised. I had assumed that after going to such lengths to get rid of me for Alex, she would have married him immediately. So they never did? It seemed even their grand, dramatic love couldn't survive the simple realities of life. Chloe pressed her lips into a thin line. There's something I need to tell you. After you left, I checked the security footage. I found out it was Alex. He's the one who drugged Haley and put her in your car. The media storm, he hired online trolls to fan the flames. I sued him. I sent him to prison. I don't know what happened to him after he got out, and I don't care. About what happened, I was wrong about you. I wanted to contact you, to apologize, but I couldn't find you. It wasn't until later that I found out you'd gone overseas on a classified mission. She explained everything in a rush, as if terrified I would misunderstand her again if she didn't get all the words out. I listened, but I didn't feel much of anything. Too much time had passed. The desperate need I once had to prove my innocence was gone. I just calmly accepted the truth. "Ethan, I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so stupid, so irresponsible. I put you through hell. I've wanted to say that to you for so long. I don't know if you can ever forgive me." She finally got the words out, her apology hanging in the air between us. "I understand," was all I said. I didn't forgive her, but I didn't lash out either. I had no desire to dwell on the past, but that didn't mean I had forgiven it. I would never forget the pain she caused me, and I would never ever put myself in that position again. Chloe looked like she wanted to say more, like she was hoping for some kind of emotional reaction from me. I didn't give her the chance. I steered the conversation back to the matter at hand. "I've heard your explanation. Since the law has already dealt with him, there's nothing more to discuss on that front. What we need to discuss now isn't the past. It's about your donations to the foundation. We need to clearly define the terms and conditions. I have no intention of ever being framed for some bizarre crime and thrown in a holding cell again. I had no desire to play polite games with her. I made my intentions perfectly clear." As she listened, Chloe felt a chill spread through her veins, leaving her feeling frozen, unable to move. He was afraid she would use the foundation to frame him again. After all these years, after everything she had done to try and make amends, that's what he thought of her? "You really think I would do something like that?" she asked, her voice wounded. I looked at her pained expression and frowned. "Wouldn't you? I only trust in evidence and legal contracts now. I won't expose myself to any unnecessary risks ever again." As I spoke, I gestured to the 2 security cameras in the corners of the room. The message was clear. I didn't trust her. Any interaction we had from now on would be recorded and witnessed. That was the biggest lesson I had learned from being so utterly betrayed by her and Alex. Chloe suddenly lost the will to argue. She felt like a fool. All her past shamelessness had come back to her now like a boomerang, hitting her square in the face. She was the one who had destroyed the image I once held of her. She was the one who had obliterated every last shred of my trust. Yes, when dealing with someone who would commit perjury to have me arrested, caution was more than justified. The rest of the meeting went smoothly. Chloe was on autopilot, agreeing to the lawyer's terms without really processing them. She felt like her body was in the room, but her spirit had fled somewhere far away. By the time all the papers were signed, the initial excitement she'd felt at the prospect of seeing me was gone, replaced by a desperate need to escape, to get away from this place of her own humiliation. Haley was waiting patiently outside. When the door opened, she saw her mother's devastated expression. "Mommy, is Daddy still mad at us?" Haley's voice pulled Chloe back from the brink. She managed a weak smile. "Hate? No, it wasn't hate. It was something worse. It was indifference." In his heart, they now ranked lower than a complete stranger. At least a stranger wouldn't have hurt him so profoundly, so shamelessly. But what could she say? She had sown these bitter seeds herself. What right did she have to complain about the harvest? "No, sweetie. How could he ever be mad at you?" Chloe stroked Haley's hair, then led her away. But that night, perhaps triggered by the intense emotional stress, Chloe's chronic stomach condition, which had been stable for some time, flared up violently. She was rushed to the hospital that evening with a bleeding ulcer. After years of simply managing the symptoms with medication instead of properly healing, the attack was unusually severe. She was taken to the ICU, and the doctors even issued a critical condition notice. I didn't find out until Haley called me in the middle of the night. Haley was mature for her age, but a situation like this was too much for her. She panicked, and her first instinct was to call an adult she could trust. I offered a few words of comfort, but I had no intention of going to the hospital. Someone with Chloe's status would have no shortage of people fussing over her. There was no reason for me to get involved. So, when Chloe finally woke up after the emergency procedure, the faces she saw were Haley's, tear-streaked with relief, and her assistant's. She instinctively scanned the room for me, but I wasn't there. A wave of disappointment washed over her. Chloe forced herself to keep a neutral expression. She waited until she was alone, then pulled out her phone and started typing a text. "Ethan, I'm in the hospital. My stomach hurts so much." She typed, then deleted it. She tried again. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about Haley's custody arrangements." The first message was the truth, but she knew I probably didn't care about her pain anymore. So she had to use Haley as bait. Call it manipulative, but in that moment of weakness, she desperately wanted to see me. When I saw the message, I agreed to go. In the time before I arrived, Chloe tried to make herself presentable, not wanting to look so haggard that I would be annoyed by the sight of her. I got there quickly. When I walked in, I was taken aback for a moment by how weak and frail she looked lying in the hospital bed. I knew this version of Chloe better than anyone. I had taken care of her in this state for years. Seeing my expression soften, she seemed to think I was reminiscing about our past, and a look of ecstatic hope crossed her face. She lowered her voice. "Ethan, I really can't take care of myself without you. I was so wrong before. Can we maybe?" I snapped out of my reverie and looked at her, a small, sad smile on my face. "Do you remember?" I began. "Years ago, in school, I was an outcast because my clothes were old and worn. You were just passing by, but you saw them bullying me, and you chased them away. After that, no one ever bothered me again. Back then, I thought you were the kindest girl in the entire world. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would do anything to repay you." Chloe looked stunned. She clearly had no memory of it. It must have been a fleeting, insignificant moment for her, a single sentence she'd forgotten as soon as she'd said it, but I had held onto it for all these years. She saw the depth of my devotion then. "Ethan, I didn't let her speak. I just kept going. So, when I heard about your accident, when I heard you were in a coma, I didn't hesitate for a second. I gave up my scholarship to study abroad and came to take care of you. During all those hopeless days and nights, when even your own family had given up on you, I kept going. I told myself that if I just held on a little longer, maybe, just maybe, you would wake up. And you did. I waited and you woke up. But in the end, our marriage became a joke." I gave a self-deprecating laugh. "If you had wanted a divorce, you could have just told me. I would never have forced you to stay. But what you did, it destroyed my memory of that kind girl from the schoolyard. It destroyed the very reason I had dedicated my life to you for all those years. I don't regret my choices. Not marrying you, and not leaving you. Never." Chloe suddenly realized she had never truly known me at all. I was stronger than she had ever imagined, more willing to let go. She didn't have that kind of courage to make a clean break. "Not even for Haley's sake? Won't you at least try again? I know I hurt you. If you would just give me one more chance, I'll prove to you that I've changed." I looked at her, a deep, searching gaze. "You don't need me, Chloe. What you need is someone to be your silent support system, someone to take care of you so you can live without a single worry. It could be anyone. The problem is, the man you chose, Alex, would never lower himself to do those things for you. That's the only reason you miss me. But I've seen what else is out there now. I've seen my own potential. I'm not going to be that foolish boy anymore, sacrificing my own life for someone else's." As I spoke, thinking of my time overseas, my eyes lit up with a light so bright that Chloe couldn't bring herself to meet my gaze. Chloe wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the words. She knew at least that I was right. Without her and Haley tying me down, I was freer, happier. What right did she have to ask me to give all that up, just to come back and take care of them? The old Chloe would have done anything to keep me, even tried to force me. But she couldn't do that anymore. After all these years, she was finally learning what it meant to truly love someone. It meant wanting their happiness, even if it meant sacrificing your own. But the person she now knew how to love would never give her that chance again. "I understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I was out of line. It won't happen again." Chloe lowered her gaze, unable to look at me any longer. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. If she had kept pushing, it would have only made things more painful for both of us. Her letting go was the best thing for everyone. "You should get some rest," I said, turning to go. "I won't bother you anymore." And then I left. Chloe watched my back until I disappeared from view. Silently, in her heart, she said goodbye. A final goodbye. Years later, at Chloe's funeral, Haley invited me to come. In all that time, Chloe had never remarried. She never bothered me again. Instead, she had quietly dedicated herself and her resources to supporting my research career from afar. I stared at the beautiful face in the photograph on display, my mind drifting back. In that moment, all the pain and bitterness of the past seemed to fade away. All that was left was the memory of a single moment, a single image I had carried with me my entire life. The girl from the schoolyard, telling a group of bullies, "Leave him alone. If you mess with him, you're messing with me." That girl was gone now, forever.